Hey guys, Griffin here, and today we're going to be talking about how to tank in Wrath. But before we get started, please take the time to like and subscribe, as it really does help me out. Okay guys, so if you've tanked in TVC, tanking in Wrath is probably pretty straightforward. But if you've never tanked before and you're getting into Wrath and you kind of want to understand how everything works, don't worry, I'm going to explain that to you today. And we're going to break it down between single target and AoE, and we will talk about Berserk, which is kind of its own thing. Okay, so first let's just get into like the basics. My talents look very similar to what they look like in Wrath. However, I'm only level 70, so I don't have all of the talents points you'd put into Restoration. It will not change your rotation whatsoever in level 70 and level 80. Tanking with both is identical. However, just so you know, I don't have points in fear, enough points in fear, I should say, and I don't have Omen of Clarity. Those will factor in when you're trying to do extra damage, though they won't really change your rotation at all. And then as far as glyphs go, I have Glyph of Maul and Glyph of Frenzy Regen. These are the only two available right now for tanks. Glyph of Maul is actually amazing, especially for 5-man, and Glyph of Frenzied Regen is great for raiding. When you're taking a lot of damage, you could pop Frenzied Regen. Now, Frenzied Regen, do not sleep on. It's a great ability now. Make sure you use it, especially if you're almost dying. But on a fight where I'm soloing stuff, because I do that all the time, I pop it actually early, like 60 to 70%, to keep me up to the 80-90 range. Okay, and then I do have Glyph of Challenging Roar, so my Challenging Roar is only 2.5 seconds instead of, or 2.5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. I have Glyph of Thorns, extending my Thorns by 50 minutes, and Glyph of Unburdened Rebirth, so I don't have to carry around the reagent required for Rebirth. Okay, my gear, this is my DPS gear, but essentially it's just mostly Sunwell gear. I apologize if you're not in, like the absolute craziest. Wow, that's, oh yeah, this is my DPS. I'll switch that really quick. You're not in the craziest DPS or even tank set. You'll be fine for most of the stuff, especially if you're not doing raiding. I'm in a 5-man non-heroic, so like even if you came in here, you'd be probably just as comfortable as I am. Okay, so that's where we're at, level 70. Getting ready for level 80. Here's the rotation. So you're going to do single target, and that's going to be our single target. That's going to be our secondary. We're pretty much just going to ignore this guy. You can build threat on him, but like for this demonstration, we're just going to single target this guy. So what you want to do is you want to first go into bear form and get 10 rage, which you didn't do because you only have 20% chance to get it. So you can just spam it if you really want to. It's not absolutely necessary to have that 10 rage, but it's really nice to have that rage to go in so you can start doing damage. So like you could just sit here and spam this until you get the 10 rage if you wanted to. I have super bad luck, so this is me being cursed. Hold on. I want to get it once before we go. Oh my god, that's like 15. It's probably like 10. Come on. Anyway, okay, one more. Okay, I'm not gonna run out of mana over this. So normally, for a tank at level 80, you'd have more points in fear. In fact, you could technically move Improved Mark of the Wild over to fear if you really want to start with rage and increase this to a 60% chance, so you only have to do that maybe once or twice instead of spamming it like I just did. But you kind of really want that opening rage. The opener is pretty much everything. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna go into bear, assume you get that 10 rage. Let's pretend you got it, and then you're usually gonna pull with Fairy Fire. Now, if you're normally used to tanking and you pop in a rage here, in order to get that extra rage, you don't necessarily want to do this out of combat anymore. You kind of want to do it as you're running in. The reason is, if you talented like I did, you have something called King of the Jungle, which is going to increase your damage from enrage by 15%. And that is a lot percent. So I want to use it on the pull, not before the pull. So I'm definitely going to start with Fairy Fire. Now, Fairy Fire also got changed, and it does damage now. This is actually big if you're trying to tag mobs from a distance. If you've ever had to tag mobs as a feral, you'd actually stay in caster form and spam Moonfire, because it actually was the best way to get mobs. Well, now, even though Fairy Fire does have a cooldown, it's still 30-yard range, and it does do damage, and as a bear, it does extra threat too. So keep that in mind. Fairy Fire is much better than it used to be. So you'd open with Fairy Fire, you'd enrage, and then start the fight. Now, if you're worried about the extra armor loss from enrage on a boss fight or something like that, what I do, I'm actually going to show you, with my enrage is I actually have it combined with bark skin, so that when I use it, my bark skin gets used. Now, if you forgot about bark skin, that's completely okay, because bears tend to not always use bark skin because you could only use it in caster form, which is no longer the case. Instead, bark skin can now be used in bear form. So Enrage Barkskin is a great opener, and Barkskin in general should be used constantly because it's a 20% damage reduction overall. It's not melee reduction, it is damage reduction. So just absolutely something you must be pressing on cooldown. It is so powerful, and it's very underutilized, especially right now. So yeah, I use Enraged Barkskin to mitigate the loss of armor and start the fight. Now, to start the fight, I'm going to queue up Maul. And what queuing up means is you can actually, if I had the rage, let me see if I can, I'm just gonna pop in rage here. So I have the rage now. So even though I'm not fighting, I can press Maul and see how it's queued. It's like white. That means that when I do hit him, it will go off. And the reason that works like that is because it's attached to your melee swing. So it's like, okay, just let me hit him. As soon as I can hit him, I will do Maul instead. So while I'm running in, I don't have to mash this button. It's already ready to go, and I just have to focus on Mangle. Now, I'm losing rage, so now I can't do Maul at all, so that's why it's grayed out. But super important to get in there, get Maul queued up, and get Mangle going. Now, Mangle has a cooldown. It's only 4.5 seconds instead of 6, like it was in TBC, but that's still a cooldown. So in between, you're going to use Lacerate. Lacerate is actually really nice, especially to use with Maul, because Lacerate not only crits on its own because of Primal Core, but it also increases the damage of Maul by 20%. So getting Lacerate up, like on a target you're mauling constantly, is going to increase the damage on that target from Maul by 20%. So again, it's Mangle with Maul, Lacerate Maul, and then Lacerate Maul again, and then you'll probably Mangle at this point. And then once you get 5 stacks of Lacerate, you'll start swiping, because you don't want to keep lacerating when it's maxed out. Instead, swipe hits multiple targets, and you almost always have a secondary target. But that is your single target threat rotation. Pretty much, that's it. That's it. Now, I'm not counting on Berserk yet. We're going to talk about Berserk separately, so keep that in mind. So that's your rotation. That's your rotation. So let's just demonstrate it really quick. Hopefully, I can get that 10 points here. But we're going to focus this guy. This guy's just going to kind of be there. So we're going to shift. We're not getting the rage, which is disappointing. I'm going to Fairy Fire pull. Now I'm going to pop in rage, queue up my Maul, and hit with Mangle. So now I'm starved for a second, but don't worry. I'm just going to ease off on my Maul. And now that I've got rage, I can go crazy. I'm stunned. That'll be fine. And then all I have to do is maintain Mangle Maul and Lacerate, and I'm good. And I'll do the same thing here. Get that going. And he's dead. And because of the short 4.5 second cooldown on Mangle, you're going to use this thing way more often. It's so amazing on threat, so just keep that in. But Maul is also amazing again. If you don't know, TBC, Maul was kind of like this annoying thing that would eat up all your rage. It still does that, but because rage is no longer that big of an issue, you're going to use it all the time. Alright, so for AoE, we're going to skip this part. Not because it's not AoE. I would definitely pull this as an AoE. But because you have to do a line of sight, because some of them are casters, it's kind of annoying. I'm going to do the same thing up here, but it'll be a lot easier for me to line of sight. Let me still pass this guy and then just go. Okay, so for AoE, the rotation is super simple. It's literally just swipe Maul, swipe Maul, swipe Maul, and that is it. There's no extra tricks or tactics to this. It's just press those 2 buttons. The only thing you want to do is make sure you tab to spread the Maul wealth. Because you do want to do damage to as many people with Maul as possible, not just one target. And I do want to point out, because I have Glyph of Maul, it's going to hit 2 targets anyway, so I definitely want to try to spread that damage as much as possible. Okay, so for AoE pulls, maybe you're going to throw a hot up. I do this out of habit, just to keep my hots rolling. And I'm just going to grab them right there and run back here and line of sight. Now, I do want these invisible dudes, so I'm really quickly grab them as well. I think I got all of them, and then I'm gonna hug this corner so this caster comes in. Now I always kill casters first, so I did a Mangle on him to get the going, but he is dead. Okay, so then I'm just Mangle Maul tab, and I'm stunned. Mangle Maul tab. Sorry, not Mangle. Swipe Maul tab. I apologize. Swipe Maul tab, and you're seeing me build threat on all of them equally. Now I have a threat monitor. See what this number here is, so I can see that this is my lowest threat. So I would pick that one, and then maybe this one's my lowest, so I'll pick that one. And that's really great. This is a weak order. I'll put it in the description if you want to check it out. But this is what you want to do. You want to keep an eye on all their threat and just pass it around. But that is literally it. It's one of the easiest AoE rotations in the game. Just swipe Maul, swipe Maul, swipe Maul. Okay, some things I didn't talk about is, I'm gonna pop it right now. Frenzied Regen is now absolutely amazing. I'm using it right now and you can see it's just climbing up my health. Um, it does a lot more and it doesn't eat, well, I shouldn't say it doesn't eat. Because your rage is more valuable, like you just get more of it, maybe. You get tons more rage. It's not as big of a concern to use Frenzied Regen mid-fight. Before, if you were doing Frenzied Regen, you almost had to stop doing damage to make any health go up because it would just eat through your rage so quickly that you couldn't do anything about it. That's not the case anymore. I definitely recommend using Frenzied Regen. The other cooldown you might want to use is Survival Instincts. Now these aren't AoE specific, they're just something that usually AoE is when you use them, it's because you're taking so much more damage for AoE pulls. But Survival Instincts is going to increase your damage by 30%. Now if you've been using maybe Nightmare Seed or just a trinket that gives you extra health, those are great. But this thing is way better because A, it's 30%, and even at 14, you're talking almost, let's see, 30% of 14 is something like 4,000. I don't know. Yeah, I think like just over 4,000. That's a lot. That's bigger than Nightmare Seed and your trinket. I think I have a trinket on me. This one does it for 2,000. I think Nightmare Seed's also 2,000. And that's unbuffed. If I'm fully raid buffed, I'm sitting, especially wearing my tank gear, I'm sitting at around 21,000 health. That means I'm getting over 6,000 on Survival Instincts. When you get to level 80 and you're sitting at 30, even in pre-raid bis, that's almost 9,000. I've heard rumor that it bears with Survival Instincts with the glyph that increases it to 45%. Can see their health pools up into the 100k. I've never seen it personally, but I'm sure, or maybe I just don't remember it. But I'm sure it probably could get that high. So Survival Instincts is absolutely amazing. Again, Frenzied Regen is good too. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about is Berserk. And that's because it's kind of weird. It doesn't really fit into a single target or an AoE. It can kind of be used for both. So for a pull like this, let's say you got a 3 pull. You almost always want to kill the casters first because they do more damage to you because you have almost no cast mitigation. So you want to focus these guys down, but you want to still build a ton of threat, or maybe they all need to die fast. You could just maul swipe AoE, no big deal, and that'd be fine. But if you really need them to die absolutely crazy fast, you could pop Berserk, which is going to allow you to hit 3 targets with Mangle, and Mangle have no cooldown. So you could absolutely melt these guys. In fact, let's just do that really quick. Let me pull them. Let's see if I can get some rage out of the shift. Man, this shift hates me. Okay, so we're gonna focus the guy, we're gonna pop, and I'm just gonna burn him down. See, like, he's already dead. And then I'm now doing these guys. See how much faster that is. And that's because Mangle does absolutely a ton of damage, and removing the cooldown and making it hit 3 people is a crazy ton of damage. So that's how Berserk can be for multi-target. But it's limited to 3 targets, so keep that in mind. So if you're doing like a bigger pull, you will have to probably tab if you're trying to, equally distribute the damage. However, if you're single targeting, oh man, this guy's gonna die so fast. If you're single targeting and you pop Berserk, it's the same idea. You don't have a cooldown on Mangle, though you're not hitting 3 targets on single target. Because the Mangle has no cooldown, you would just do Mangle Maul, Mangle Maul, Mangle Maul. Now, you might want to put a Lacerate up before you pop Berserk because it increases the damage of Maul, but honestly, because Berserk is so crazy, you don't really have to worry about it too much. If you're trying to do maximum damage though, it probably is the play. But as far as threat goes, as long as you've got Mangle going non-stop on your target, you should have no problems with threat. But that Berserk has a 3-minute cooldown, so you want to keep in mind, most people save it for boss fights, though it can be used for AoE packs. I think Berserk's one of the more interesting spells because if you're doing like a dungeon and the boss is over 3 minutes away, you should absolutely be popping it even on trash because it is so advantageous to use it. You don't want to just save it for boss fights if you can fit it into like your other pulls and stuff like that. Factor that in. So again, it is both a single target and an AoE burst damage ability. You just have to know when to use it, and it's kind of, if you're unsure, I would recommend starting with just using it on boss fights, and then once you figure out, like, for example, Violet Hold. If you've never done Violet Hold in Wrath, it is a very specific fight. It's like think of Black Morass. It's very similar. You got these packs coming. Well, you always know that I think it's the 6th, 12th and 18th, or is it the 5th, 10th, whatever. Every so often you'll get a boss, and it's a very specific amount. But I found out that because of the amount of time you have in between each bosses, you can start the fight, like start the instance, the first wave. I use Berserk on because I know in 3 minutes, I'll have 3 minutes left until the next boss is up with Berserk ready to go. But that's it. If I try to pop it anywhere else, I always am on cooldown during the boss fight. And that's something you just kind of learn from playing the instances, the raids, all that stuff, is to use your Berserk on boss fights, but also when to use it on non-boss fights. So just keep that in mind. Something I didn't talk about is challenging roar. So this used to be a 10-minute cooldown, and it was kind of just like, you almost had to like hold your breath to use it, because if you used it at the wrong time and then you needed it again at a later time, you didn't have it because it's a 10-minute cooldown, which is actually pretty long. They reduced it down to 3 minutes, and if you glyph into it, it's down to 2.5 minutes. So it's not as big of a deal to use it. In fact, I recommend, if you're especially getting comfortable in 5-mana instances, to try to use it anytime you lose threat. Like anytime. If you're starting to lose threat, challenging roar. But definitely on big packs. You don't want to do it on like 1 or 2. Because let's say I lose threat and this guy's running over to my healer, I can now range taunt. I don't know if you saw that, I just taunted him from a very distance. Huge deal. So you no longer need to chase. Normally you would charge that guy and then, try to drag him back to the pile. Instead, you could just range taunt him, and that's it. So range taunt is also much, much better now, because like growl used to just like, you had to literally be like up in their face and growl, but now it is a solid 30 yards away. So that is an improvement. Again, a lot of our stuff is exactly the same as TBC. It just was slightly improved to be better. So let's go over this. You got your single target down. It's Mangle, Maul, Lacerate, Enrage on cooldown whenever you can because it does extra damage. Swipe, Maul for AOE. Growl now is range. Fairy Fire does damage if you're a bear. And Challenging Roar. The only thing I have left to talk about is actually Nature's Grasp, which can now A, be used inside, and B, is a standard spell for all druids. So let's talk about Nature's Grasp. I'm actually going to try this thing out. I haven't used it. I don't use it very often. You use it a lot when you're soloing content, but when you are 5-manning, you don't really need it. Like if, let's say you do an AoE pull and everything's going wrong, Nature's Grasp could save you a lot of problems. So let's do a Nature's Grasp pull here. Oh, I also want to point out it can be used in form, so you don't have to be in caster form. So let's just pop it now. I'm going to go after this guy and just not use any abilities. So I rooted him. See if I can get this guy to get rooted too. There's 3 charges now instead of just 1. So I could root up to 3 things. This guy, there we go. Wow. So now I have 2 rooted, and I just want to kill the imp. So let's say this imp is actually hard to kill. I could take my time, and let's say he lowered my health by 40%. I could pop out and heal, no big deal. And I technically still have 1 more Nature's Grasp. So I could run past him, re-root him, and then fight this guy. And I mean, if these guys did any damage, this would be absolutely amazing. Obviously, you have to factor in that casters won't be as beneficial to this because they can just cast anyway. But Nature's Grasp, do not sleep on it, especially for leveling. It's going to be great. And for tanking, if you absolutely need to control a fight a little bit stronger, a little bit more complex, you can obviously just use Entangling Roots, but Nature's Grasp is so great because you can just, up to 3 mobs. But that's it, guys. This is tanking. I didn't talk about Demo Roar, but yeah, press the Demo Roar for AoE pulls. It doesn't do a lot of threat, but it does reduce the attack power by 228. But it'll obviously be scaled up at later levels, and you can actually spec into it if you really want to. Guys, if you have any questions about tanking that I didn't cover, maybe I missed something, just let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video, or maybe I'll just respond to your comment. Thanks for watching, and as always, guys, take care.